Welcome to Design Downtime, the podcast where we celebrate the joys of living a balanced creative life. I'm your host, Guy Siegel, a design director in Toronto, Canada, and I invite you to join me on this journey as we redefine what it means to be a successful design professional. Let's break free from the shackles of hustle culture and embrace the full spectrum of human experience, because life is too precious to be spent only in pursuit of productivity. Today, I'm delighted to talk to Erin Casali. Erin is a VP/Director of both product and design, with over 10 years of experience in each. She has a hybrid approach with design, product, and engineering in her background. Her rare blend of skills, including psychology and change management, enables her to foster collaboration and break down silos. Driven by a passion for improving lives through her work, she empowers teams to reach their full potential. She advocates for purpose, transparency, and diversity, fostering a culture of trust and agency. Her diverse experiences across startups, large corporations, advisory, and board roles have equipped her with a versatile toolkit to adapt to various organizational contexts and drive meaningful change. Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. And you want to talk to us about illustration.
Yes, exactly. I think that is definitely one of the topics that I enjoy a lot and has a lot of different ways for me to express, really.
I usually like to start with the origin story, how you got to that. But I think with this specific topic, because it's such a big topic, there's so many styles and approaches. Is there any area specifically in illustration that you want to focus on?
I think we can touch a few things in the sense that, in a sense, similar to my own background, I tend to be I can do a very mixed approach in that sense. We can start mostly from normal drawing and so on, and then I've been doing more recently some experimentation on painting, those kind of things, also on digital in some ways. And I think all these pieces are interesting and have something inside that I personally find fascinating.
Yeah. So, you know what? Let's jump right in. How did Erin start illustrating?
Yes. So the funny thing, and it's also kind of related to me being a designer, so my designer roles, is that I actually started very early, like, the classic getting a pencil in my hand and start drawing on anything available as a kid. I always really enjoyed it. And it's really interesting because later, to be clear, I've never been diagnosed or done any tests, but I think I have some form of aphantasia or aphantasia, I don't know the accent. And that means that I cannot quite visualize as sharply as I understand other people do in my head. And I think that has been sort of an interplay of things, because I needed to put things on paper. I needed to see things in order to think through, in order to, make them, in a sense, real. And I think that that's what started everything in a way. That's the current hypothesis, at least. I always enjoyed it. And over the years, I picked up different techniques, experimented with things, moved to digital, of course. And I never had a formal education, so it's always been a sort of a passion on the side. And yeah, that's more recently I started doing and seeing if I can do things that are actually a little bit more interesting or for others in a sense. And because, as a designer, I've done my own share of illustration sets and things that vectors, but I think that these are different, and it's more like refinement and polish and structure and strategy. And while the illustration I tend to do in my free time, tend to break out of that, are kind of the opposite on purpose.
So, you intentionally use illustration as something that's the anti-design.
In a sense, yes. And I tell you more on this one. A few years back, I realized that the way my brain worked, and the way also in because of digital, when I can draw a curve and then it's not quite there, I can adjust and I can adjust and I keep adjusting until I get the right illustration, right? I get the right thing I want. When I was then back doing, paper and so on with a pencil, I tended to do the same. So I draw, I sketch, and it's like not quite there. I erase, I do it again. And at some point, I was like, you know what? I want to stop that. So on purpose, I decided to say, I'm not using a pencil anymore. I'm not using an eraser anymore. I'm just using ink straight from how it goes, it goes. And then kind of was a combined way to both break out my own habits and try different things, but also a way to say, you know what, I can improve because I do something, it's not quite right. I need to restart and do it again in full. And that has a sort of a forcing function as well, you know? And it's worked really well. I still enjoy very much. I'm not as strict as I used to be on this, but I still enjoy that approach much more.
That is really fascinating because how was that move from I don't have to get it right. I can always change it. I can always iterate on it. And then moving into something that I need to live with the consequences, sort of.
Yeah, in a sense, even before drawing, for me, that has been great because the erase and perfect on the detail is interesting, it's useful, and it leads in a way to a better outcome. We can define better later, of course. But also, it's a mindset and set my brain in a more study, refine, iterate mentality, right? On the detail. Instead, if I'm doing like from scratch ink, no other options, it's very much like, oh, I need to become good in the first line, in the first row, more intentional if you want, but also more practice. And at the same time, it's more big picture, enforce it because you have only one shot to do the detail. And once it's done, you move on. And so it allowed me to start focusing more on the kind of, okay, how is the overall thing I'm trying to do? How is the thing? And honestly, for the way I am today, it's way more enjoyable.
You said that you have a form of aphantasia, right? Which means it's more difficult for you to picture things, to imagine things visually in your mind. For me, from my experience, if I'm drawing something, I see something in my head, and then I say, I want to replicate that. I want to put it out there. How is that process for you if you don't have that initial idea of what that looks like?
That's excellent. Good question, because that's exactly the process, in a sense, that led me to start realizing that, yeah, maybe I do have some form of that. Because as you just said, right, people were telling me, oh, I have this, very clearly in my mind. I know where I want to go, and I put it down. And for me, that has never been the case. I always have like loose ideas. I can, oh, yeah, I think I saw something. If I combine this and that and the other things and I put it together, it should work. And logically, it should work. But it's never been, I have a picture in my mind, right? In a sense, I kind of describe more like I have a very, the difference between the cut the picture and the final rendering, right? I have this kind of very loose, like, outline and then I need to put it down. And that's the thing. Sometimes I put it down and it's not good. And then I'm like, okay, let's try something else. Let's try to recombine. And honestly, also seeing, we're talking illustration, but even in design, when I see other designers work, even just looking, at them, my approach has always been, okay, how can I optimize for speed? Because I need to be able to put something down, more than one thing, and I know it's not going to be good, but I know that I can do the next one and the next one and the next one, and I generate, and refine until I get to what actually I'm trying to get to. And I realize it's very different from other people, but that means also that my tools need to optimize for that, right? And illustration is the same, in the sense that I have this loose idea. I start drawing and put it down, and how it comes, it comes. And the forcing function becomes, well, if it's ink, I just need to take a new sheet of paper and draw again. We can talk about the waste of that. I'm always very concerned. That's kind of why I switched some of these to digital. But that's kind of how it works. So the moment I have the general direction, I put it down, and then I can check that's what I meant or not.
Do you ever work with models that you draw from, or is it all something that is completely driven by your imagination?
Yes. Well, models, you mean like having an external reference in general, or?
Yes.
I think it's again probably a combination of things, in the sense, for me, the creative process, pure creative process, starts with just ideas bubbling up, and I try to just catch these, and maybe they're not very clear, but I let them go, right? And that's, to me, the imagination part. But then the having a reference, I would say that I also distinguish, we can get into this, between the learning process, so how I can learn and improve my skills, from I'm generating an idea, I have something in mind and I want to make it happen. And yes, I generally try to use external sources, but I want to say I also try, and this has been part of my own learning journey. I've always trying to work and practice to build up knowledge, so I have the ability to do without needing a reference. Which, to be clear, I don't think it's anything. I'm not saying anything fancy. I think any artist does the same. But I've been very conscious about, oh, okay, I'm doing this, I'm learning or not, and shifting kind of my mindset when I'm doing the things I'm doing.
You mentioned that one of the reasons you moved to digital was the waste of paper, of resources. How did you find that moving from something that's tactile and physical to something that is a lot more forgiving, maybe in that sense?
Yeah, I hear a lot of people that, for example, don't like the way the pen slides on the tablet or things like that. And I get it. Like, it is different, and it is definitely a different materiality. I just, I think that I just accepted that is different, like using a different kind of pen or a different kind of tool. But I have to say that the probably this is also partially driven from me by the way I approached it from the beginning, which means that I've never been someone that started, as I said, I never had a full artistic studies or anything like that. So that never created in me that kind of big background of experience of, oh, I practiced for 8 years, 7 years deeply into very material tool. And so when I shift to a screen, it's weird. For me, it's always been a blend. I've always tried to, since years and years ago, I always try to have these kind of digital tools, right? Since I knew it was possible, I always tried to have a Wacom tablet or something like that very early on. And so yeah, that's been a distinction. And I tried also to use the digital part more for the learning of the shape, the motions, the exploration of how to learn as drawing a certain thing more than anything else.
You did say you never had like proper, not proper, but formal education in illustration or art. How do you improve on your craft?
I think it's been a mix of things, in the sense that my, well, first of all, which I think it's good context, also my parents never had formal education, but they both have some kind of artistic endeavor. Like, they did sculpture, they did oil painting, and I just saw how they were doing it and why they're doing it, how they approached it. And I think having these examples kind of help, because, oh, well, if they can reach good results, and that's how they did, I have a path that I can, in a sense, follow in a way. At the same time, I just always been interested in it, so I have a lot of people, friends I know that are from with an art background. I often end up talking to them and having conversations and see, oh, hey, I'm finding this difficult. How do you approach it? Or just, yeah, how are things? How did you learn it in the first place? I still remember years ago, I wanted to do more practice, for example, because I felt I was very bad to draw the human body and so on. And I really struggled, right? I tried with some books and never find quite the right approach. And I started talking with friends and was like, yeah, that is definitely difficult. And it's, you have full classes dedicated to that. And then we started discussing, different learning approaches. For example, there is one of my friends that studied, and the way they approached it in her studies was to think about, hey, it's you think about a geometric object, like you compose the body with literal 3D rectangles, cubes, boxes. You compose the body and then you draw inside the box. And I'm like, okay, like small, more sculptural, right? And then I had others that were like, oh no, for us it was just, study. You start studying a detail and you draw it and you study another details and slowly you compose it. And then there is a more traditional, drawing the general shape with the ovals. And I think that all the discussion, all these things kind of built up slowly. I tried all the things, I see what worked for me, what didn't, and I slowly improved. And this has been kind of what I did for everything I was doing illustration related. So yeah, that's how I came to improve uh, step by step.
And are there any artists you find your style is similar to or interested in exploring that direction?
I don't have one specific one. I don't think there is anyone. I also don't have a style now that I can say, oh, this is me. I don't think I've reached that point yet. Even if probably if you see the stuff I do, you may get a sense of some approaches. But at the same time, I'm very conscious that, for example, I started almost a year ago now this series called Inklings of Late. And it's just single images with a cute animal drawn with very sketchy black on colors, fully digital in this case. And so you could say that that is my style, but it's been mostly a choice for that I find pleasurable to draw and nice to look at, and I selected it. I'm not sure if that counts as a style though. In that regard, I'm pretty much very like going to exhibitions, seeing painters, discovering, reading about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and slowly finding, oh, actually that was interesting. And then I go back and I try to apply to what I'm doing and say, oh, let's see if that thing that I just read about or saw at that exhibition actually is an interesting one. So yeah, I don't have a specific name. I can mention probably some that I've seen recently, but at the same time, they're probably not illustrators more broadly. That's kind of. I don't have a single one. Sorry, it's not.
And does illustration fill any sort of a ritual in your life? Do you have like specific days or hours? Is it tied to any sort of like, do you set time for it? Or is it more of a fluid thing that happens when, inspiration hits?
Yes, I think that has changed it again, different stages. At some point, for example, again, because I wanted to improve, I kind of forced myself to go at least once a month to do a live drawing class. So again, sort of a forcing function. And so I've done a little bit of that. There's been another period where I was doing at least 10 minutes every day to do some practice, some studies. Right now, for example, it's been a combination of more fluid. I tend to do more in the evening as a kind of wind down kind of things. I just literally scroll Pinterest or books that I have or things like that. And when I catch something that is like, oh, interesting, and I do a sketch, more as a practice. But on top of that, because I've also started doing this like inklings of late, I also I'm aiming to have a practice of at least once a week. So that has been become the stable rhythm that helps making them.
At what point in your long illustration journey did you say, okay, I'm ready to show this to people. I'm ready for others to experience that?
This is a great question. I don't think I'm ready even now, even if it happens. Most of the time, I have to say I don't like the stuff I do in general, and this applies also to illustration. So for that, I have to say I started relying on other people. I trusted trusting other people, relying on other people's opinion. Um, it's been a combination of becoming more okay with sharing with a few people that then they started saying, "Hey, this is actually good. You could come out something out of it, right?" And slowly over time, I was like, okay, maybe I can start sharing more and showing more. That has been is still a bit of a struggle in a sense. I had a lot of things to do that I don't share more broadly. I don't think they're good enough. So yeah, I started trusting basically people around me and say, actually, this is good enough. It's okay if you decide ever to share it. I was like, okay, thank you.
We are our own biggest critics. What do you think is going to make it good enough for you to be comfortable to share it with more people?
I think there are a lot of elements. Part of it is just technique in the sense that I try to go away from the comparing myself to others. That is never is good, but only to a certain point. So there is an element of that oh, I'm able to draw this figure, and I think it's actually you know if I compare with other things around, it is good. So the technique there is there. And second, is probably not even how good the idea is, but how I got to the idea. And I know it may sound a subtle distinction, but for example, in some cases, I realize I'm browsing, I get an idea from something I've seen, and I draw something, and it's nice. And I'm not comfortable still with sharing that because even if it's a different thing, I still feel it's derivative from someone else's work or too close to their work. And so the way I reach the idea, the way I reach the output, it also matters to me, at least. And I think that is the second element that would make it okay, if it makes sense.
So you're saying how original the idea is has a big factor on you feeling comfortable with, okay, this is an original Erin work.
Absolutely that. And to be clear, I'm also very much of a fan of the concept, everything is a remix and we're all building on everyone's shoulder. So there is definitely a line there somewhere. But yes, that is how I got to the point I got. It's very important.
You worked with pencils, then you moved to ink, you're working a lot in digital now. Is there any other media that you want to explore illustration in or a visual art form?
Absolutely. One aspect for me is also that I try to work on the idea that there are no separation line between areas. And what I mean with this is, for example, what is illustration when something stops being that and becomes something else, right? And I'm saying this because as more recently I started picking up and learning how to do acrylics, for example, so more in a sense more traditional painting, so canvases and so on. And then I was like, well, you can also use acrylics to do other things, and you paint objects. And okay, is that still it? Because the techniques is the same. You're still reaching that. And also, what happens if you start adding to a painting something that is not just paint, right? There are some artists, for example, that start including things on the canvas, start breaking the canvas, start doing things with it, right? Does it stop being then one thing and becomes another? I don't know, frankly, where the line is, and I'm okay with that. But I think that it is, to me, it's a matter of it's good to have the technique and be recognized where a boundary is not a boundary, because yeah, nice things happen fundamentally. And on the topic, I also have a friend that she, out of nothing years ago, she was like, you should do like big installations. I'm like, what? I've never done anything similar. Where did you get this idea? And she was like, well, because you always think about the full, experience of someone. We talk a lot about this. You walk in a museum and you start thinking, why is the museum done in a certain way? What experience does it make, when you walk in? And it's frankly, it's true in the sense that, to give you a very quick example, if right now I tell you to open a browser page and look at a very good painting of someone, it's just a picture on a screen, right? As big as your screen is, as good as the screen is. But the fact that you're going to a place and walking into a specific room and in a specific, there are a lot of things that build up to that moment that, in a sense, is creating the full experience for you experiencing that object or that painting, right? And so I was like, yeah, maybe one day. I don't think I have the space right now.
You mentioned earlier that art or the creative endeavor is we keep remixing things that came before us. Do you ever do that for yourself? Do you ever revisit previous works and iterate on them?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that there is an element of that in the sense of I tend to sometimes to go. So first of all, I tend to never go back and look again at past things as a practice in the sense of I don't usually do that, right? But occasionally, yes, I like actually going back. And I think the reason for that is I want to recreate, in a sense, not the surprise I did it, so who cares? But it's more like if I wait a longer time, I kind of becomes less of a memory or more diffused. So when I go back without having constantly refreshed, oh, I did that, I did that, I did that, it becomes a different experience. There is more distance to it. And I don't know, I feel I'm getting more value of having that distance. So doing that less frequently. And sometimes, yes, I pick something. I was like, oh, actually, this thing I did that time, maybe what happens if I try to draw this concept again, right? With the skills that I have now acquired. And yeah, sometimes it's very interesting.
You mentioned that you were going more into live drawing, and one of the famously tougher areas you mentioned is the human body. Are there any other technical milestones you're looking to conquer?
I would say now it's part of reaching a few mix of techniques that I would be comfortable with and I can go back to it and I would be, oh, okay, yeah, I know that if I use this mix, the output is going to be interesting, right? And on the other side, I already mentioned I'm doing a little bit on acrylics and learning that. But there is also an element, in a sense, counterintuitively, that is about accepting, and it is a milestone, and it is accepting the limitations, and that is kind of okay. And I'm saying this because I can give you an example. I was recently reading very randomly Charles Schulz, the author of Charlie Brown Peanuts, right? And it was this interview. It wasn't even the drawings. It was an interview, and he was like, I hate backgrounds. I cannot make a background. Backgrounds are so difficult, and I cannot make it, right? And every time I hear something like that from someone that is big or a big author or famous or someone that I see their work and I'm like, this is amazing. Every time you always have this kind of comments behind the scenes of, oh, they cannot do that, or they feel they cannot do that, right? That doesn't matter. And I think that that is also a sort of a realization because, yes, in one way, a specific author or a specific artist is struggling because they feel they're not good enough to do a certain thing. And at the same time, it's sort of the thing that is missing means that the other things are good. And that's by focusing on the other things, they made still something really good. It's incredible. For example, if I think back at this, to give another example, Tracy Emin, there is a beautiful exhibition at the Tate Modern these days. She got a lot of criticisms over the year about what is she doing, is art, is not art, what is it, right? And even besides the discussion of what is what, the variety and the mix of things and the darkness and the limitations that she herself expresses of being difficult and being challenging when doing the work, it still means that there are incredible things she did. And it's encouraging in a way, but also it means, hey, it's okay if there are some things that are not good. What are the things that are good though?
You mentioned earlier exploring the boundaries between types of art forms where the technique is very much the same, but maybe the expression or the intention is a bit different. I wanted to ask you about a different type of boundary between art and design, especially when you're doing digital illustrations. It's lines of pixels on a screen. How do you keep that separation between I'm doing design and I'm doing art?
I mean, there is probably, this is a topic I loved. Sometimes I feel that one of my passions is boundaries, like where is the line up between things. And so this is definitely something I look deeply into. And at a personal level, I would say that the distinction is how I approach it, right? In the sense that if I'm doing illustrations for work because I need to set, I start with, okay, this is the end goal, this is the system I'm working with, these are all the pieces that are needed, what works, what is a good strategy, what make it effective, and you kind of backtrace, okay, what are the constraints to work within to make the output I want, right? And it's a very like logical and programmatic. There is creativity in there. I'm not saying no, right? But it's very much like sort of bottom up in a way, or top down, depending on what we are thinking as a reference model. While when I'm doing like sort of more open illustration in a sense for myself, it just the thing I'm enjoying is that it is just coming from sort of the creative process itself. It's an open-ended thing, right? And I can get inputs from the outside, but they're not constraints. It's just, oh, wait a second, this plus this, what does it do, right? And the openness of that changes things. And then, of course, there is learning that I consider also separate as a third thing. And to me, this is a distinction There is an interesting one, however, as I said, it's a topic I look at deeply into. That says that humans. This is a psychological studies that I've found, and they're basically that what we consider as society, as humans, as art, is literally the idea that brought that up. And there is this wonderful example of a painting that I think it's called 1,000 hours of staring or looking. Sorry, I don't remember the exact name. And it's literally a blank canvas. And the only difference is that they tell you that the artist just stood in front of the canvas, staring at the canvas for 1,000 hours. And it is, by most people, considered art. And so, what makes the distinction becomes, oh, what are we projecting of humanity into it? A technical illustration is not, you're not connecting to it in the same way as, oh, there was a human here that lived to produce this thing. There is a sort of a, and you can call it soul, you can call it whatever is your belief system, right? But that's what kind of makes the difference.
That is beautiful. On that note, Erin, where can people find you?
I would say that, like, officially it's like intenseminimalism.com is my website, newsletter, whatever, and it's more general, it's professional, but it's more open. Otherwise, my series Inklings of Late, which is Instagram, Tumblr, whatever platform, Blue Sky, I try to post there as well.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is all for this episode of Design Downtime. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, I hope you enjoy your downtime.